I've got a vehicle running from us.
Have you ever wondered what it's like to work in law enforcement? From deputies on patrol, what it's like to work in corrections, dig into some cold case investigations, and reveal the multitude of untold stories of how our officers give back to the community. All stories from your neighbors, the hard-working men and women who serve the citizens of York County.
I can back 144 on 5.
This is YCSO Behind the Badge, the official podcast of the York County Sheriff's Office. Welcome to YCSO Behind the Badge. I'm Trent Ferris, Public Information Officer for the York County Sheriff's Office, and your host for the next 30 minutes or so. You've probably gotten the hint by now. If you're a regular listener to the podcast, we like for you to go check us out on our Facebook page, Instagram page, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, and where you could also listen to us on the video cast if you don't have a podcasting service on YouTube. Lastly, sign up for those Notify Me alerts straight to your phone and email at yorkcountysheriff.com, because if a major event happens in the county that we feel needs your attention, we can send you notifications to your area so we can get the right information to the right people. That's you, our local citizens, at exactly the right time. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and as well as Crime Prevention Awareness Month. So there's a lot of awarenesses this month. Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and a whole bunch of other ones. October just seems to be that month for awareness. Crime prevention isn't always locking your doors at night. It also is preventing crimes of abuse. And I read a stat just the other day that on average 20 people per minute are victims of physical violence, and by an intimate partner in the United States, that's every minute 20 people are victims of physical violence by an intimate partner in the United States. So with that, we decided to bring one of our victim advocates from the Victims Assistance Unit here at the York County Sheriff's Office. Robyn Crews is one of 5 victim advocates we have at the York County Sheriff's Office, and she is willing to come in and tell you about our Victims Advocate Unit. And welcome to the podcast.
Right. Thank you. Thank you for asking me to be here today.
Oh gosh, I'm glad, because it's one of those things where it was talk about we had the detention center medical unit in here, Netta Cannon come up here, and Nurse Cannon. I was like, I know you. Yes. I've been down in the medical unit, but I don't know what you do. Yes. And I'm supposed to be the guy that knows what everything goes on here. And there's a lot I don't know about what the Victim Advocate Unit does. And so this is not only for our listeners, it also is something for me to learn a little bit more about y'all. Sure. But first, tell us about Robyn Crews, the person behind the badge.
Okay. Well, I have been here at the Sheriff's Office almost 10 years. Prior to that, I have a background in medical, which was interesting. It's been hard for me to make the switch from the chart to the case file. Oh. But I was a medical secretary on a hospital floor, in doctor's offices. I've always wanted to serve people, help people. So I helped doctors and nurses and patients. And then I kind of made the switch about 10 years ago. Made the switch and came here to the Sheriff's Office. Started out in records for about a year or so. And then I had the opportunity to work in the CID, and that's our crime detective division. And I was the administrative assistant there, helping those guys.
I remember that.
Yep, back there as the administrative assistant. And then when I came to the Sheriff's Office, though, I always had my eye on Victim Advocate, because it just seemed like if there ever was an issue or something, it was always get them to the Victim Advocate.
Right.
Get them to the Victim Advocate. They could offer assistance and help, and with my heart of service and wanting to help people, I just, from the very beginning, I was like, what did those girls do back there? And I figured out what they did really quick, and so that's where I had my eye. So when the opportunity came to apply for that position, I did, and I was lucky enough to be chosen for that.
Awesome.
And so I've done that now for about 4.5 years.
Wow.
And
It's been that long?
love it. Yes,
Wow.
It has been. Time is flying by.
To me, it seems like you've been there longer, even though I remember when you were in CID, and it just seems like you've been there longer than that. That's 4 years.
Yeah,
Blown
4.5
by.
years. And honestly, I feel like my entire life has prepared me to be a victim advocate. My personal life, on a personal note, I'm a pastor's wife, and serving, that is constantly serving people,
Right.
and ministering to people and meeting the needs of people. So I feel like, being a mom, and that's meeting people's needs. Everything is about serving people and meeting the needs of people, seeing things through their eyes and what they need, and then it's troubleshooting, finding what do we need to do to help this person? How can we move them to the next step and make life easier for them? Because a crime victim, they've had something, it could be a petty larceny, something
Right.
as simple as that, to a murder. They've
Right.
had something terrible happen in their life, something stolen is an awful thing at that moment, to a
Right.
murder, and they need help. They don't know how to navigate the criminal justice. A lot of people don't, even
Yeah.
from a petty larceny. It could be the first thing that's ever happened to them, and they don't know where to turn. So we're there to help answer their questions and move them through that criminal justice process, help them obtain restitution, answer questions, obtain the documents that they might need, offer assistance and support. And I just feel like everything has prepared me to help these people along the way, all of my life processes.
Right, because like you said, I mentioned this to somebody the other day. I've worked in 2 careers in my life where you meet people on the worst day of their life,
Yeah.
whether it's something small as far as a petty larceny or a house fire or something. When I was a reporter, I had to go talk to people. But hey, your house burned down. Tell me about it. How you
Yeah.
feeling right now? And now, as this and working in law enforcement, same thing.
Yeah.
Oh, you just lost a loved one to a murder. The media is going to come out, start talking
Yeah.
to you. That kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
wow. So from smallest crimes to the biggest crimes, a victim advocate is there. And just run us
Absolutely.
through a day, of what you do. You kind of touched on it, but kind of back up a little bit and tell us what you do on because there's you and 4
Yeah.
other ladies in there
Yeah.
who do this.
We have, there's 4 of us, and then a supervisor, and then we have an administrative assistant, and then
forgot
we
about
can
her.
have volunteers. Yes. And we're divided by area. I serve the Rock Hill area.
Okay.
And then we have, again, we have one in York, the York area, the Clover area, and then the Fort Mill area. And then, of course, we have the supervisor. We come in, and it starts off, we have lots of paperwork. We notify people about court dates, talk with them about that. We help negotiate those cases with the officers and the victims. We're helping to work out, and this is on the magistrate level that we work. We might provide transportation to court if a victim needs that.
Oh, okay.
If there's restitution involved, we're working with that victim to get documentation, because someone can't, if there's like damage to property,
Right.
They can't just say, oh, I think it's $500. We need proof of that.
Yeah.
So we're helping to get estimates. We're letting the victim know what we need in court. So we're constantly working with that victim to help them understand what's needed in court. We're obtaining that stuff for the officer, and then helping that victim understand the process of what's going to happen when we get to court, understand like the disposition, like
Yeah.
if we're going to go in, and if because they think, oh, well, I want this to happen in court, and help
Right.
them understand, well, it might not exactly go that way. We're going to make this offer and see if the defendant will accept it, because they might not want to plead guilty. They might it might be their first crime, and so they get an opportunity for pretrial intervention. And so it's a lot of explaining and working with the victim to help what they're wanting in their mind, but then also working with the criminal justice process and what's possible.
Is it one of those things where you watch the crime dramas on television where like Law and Order, where you have the crime the first half hour and then the court portion of it the second half hour, and folks think, oh, I'm going to go to court right now, jury trial, this is it, I want to go all the way, and then that's not the case.
No.
You sit there and tell, hey, look, the criminal court process is
It's a process. It can be several times to court. And, that becomes frustrating. It's almost like the victim gets re-victimized because they miss time from work.
Right.
They're having to gather all of these documents that we need. And so they feel that again. So sometimes as the victim advocate, we're having to help them know that, I get that. I get that you're having to take time off from work. I get that you feel that. Just hearing those words that we have that compassion for them means so much, because they're not getting that necessarily from others in the process. But knowing that we're saying that to them, that we hear you, we hear that you're upset that you've had to take another day off. It's just part of the process.
Well, good listening ear. You're good. Somebody who can
Absolutely.
just throw it. I guess that has to be a little, frustrating and hard on you as the
Yes.
person, because people are throwing all their frustrations on you, and you have to come back
Absolutely.
and say, "Sorry, this
And
just the process."
Yeah, it's a process. We're going to work this process, and I try to upfront tell them, probably this first day in court, it's a negotiation. We're not going to get what we're looking for, but if you'll hang with us, we're going to keep working this. But that's just one part of it. There's other crimes that we're trying to get resources for our victims, crime victim funds. Like if there's medical, maybe it's been an assault and battery, and that victim has medical expenses, then I'm looking for ways to help them pay their medical bills.
Okay.
Now, if you have insurance, you have to file your insurance. A lot
Right.
of people don't really understand, but crime victim funds are a payer of last resort. So I'm going to take that application, but your insurance is going to need to pay first if you have insurance. If you
Right.
don't have insurance, then crime victim funds, of course, is going to pay first, or it's the only payment that you have. But we're going to look for ways to help you pay those medical bills. Take that application for crime victim funds.
That's helpful, because a lot of people, the insurance business is, tough as it is, and if you don't have insurance, it could be even worse if you don't have anybody to help you through that process. So
Absolutely.
that's good. I didn't know that.
Yes.
That's good, because that process could be almost as stressful as being in court.
Yeah. And then we're evaluating victims for other resources, like domestic violence. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. But if a victim doesn't want to go back to the home and maybe is wanting to get out and maybe get their own apartment, we do have transitional housing funds that we can apply for. We have some grocery funds that we can apply for. There's other state funds that are crime victim funds that we can apply for. There's other resources here in our county. But we are evaluating these crimes and seeing what resources that we have available here. We have just all kinds of things here in York County that we look for.
Right.
We have Safe Passage would be another available for domestic violence, but we'll get more into that.
Well, we posted something about that on Facebook today. The Sheriff Tolson asked me to do that, and that's what I did. So that
Absolutely.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Absolutely.
But yeah, gosh, that sounds like so much. That sounds like a lot for just one person, but you handle
Yes.
multiple people, right?
Absolutely. We constant phone calls, people wanting to know, I'm being harassed by this person, I need a restraining order, and they don't understand the process. So we take phone calls and walk them through that process of how to obtain a restraining order. Do we even have enough evidence? So then we'll walk through. They'll explain the situation, and we'll kind of tell them the process, or either we'll meet with them and actually fill out applications for restraining orders, for order of protections.
Things that people probably wouldn't know how to do on their own.
Right. A lot of people don't know how to do that. And so we're there to meet with them and talk with them about that. A lot of people wait too late they try to put up with what's going on. They don't have police reports to back up the things that are happening, and those are helpful to file for a restraining order. So we're able to jump in and to help them start filing those reports. Saving evidence is so critical when you're being harassed. So we're able to help them understand how to save evidence, and so that they have that when they go to court.
Is that something that, say you don't, right now, somebody says, I think I'm being harassed, but I don't know if I'm being harassed, but they don't have any records or anything like that with us, or could they call you and say, hey, this is what's going on, how can you help me? Is that a process
Absolutely,
too?
that's what we do. We talk to people, we help them understand, number one, harassment's one-sided. You can't be having a conversation back. You have to let them know you don't want to communicate. And then if it keeps on, text messages, unwanted phone calls, then you can document those things.
Document it, right?
You can have an
Everything.
officer document that for you. And we can have an officer ask them to quit. And then if it keeps on, then, we can move forward with a restraining order or even a warrant, and in some cases.
Wow, that's a lot. That's a lot to digest, but it's probably good information for people who might not know where to go. They may be just sitting there, like, this has happened to me. This is happening to me. I don't know what to do next. I don't feel like there's any help, but there's victim advocates and plenty of resources that you can help
Absolutely.
give them for that. And
We are here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365
That's
days
right.
a year. We are on. There's one of us on call
Yeah.
all the time. Now, there's certain things that we like to handle during business hours.
Sure.
But we respond to the hospital for certain assaults, rapes. We respond to the crime scene for homicides, suicides, if the family needs us, if there's not support there. It's part of protocol for domestic violence that we be called when there's an arrest to talk to the victim. So we are available. If a victim needs us, we want to be involved and offer support and assistance.
That's amazing because I from my experience on the PIO side, we will go to a homicide scene, and I think right before COVID started, we had a really tragic homicide over towards the Leslie area where a person killed his estranged girlfriend or wife, and then the son, his young son. And I just remember seeing the victim. I don't know if it was you or whoever. You were out there.
Me and Tina responded.
Y'all were out there with the family, standing them with them over off to the side, making sure that they were all good to go, and just that physical support too, not just a phone call support. You're there with them, and folks might not think that everybody on a crime scene is all detectives and road deputies.
Absolutely.
It is more than just that, and it's good to have y'all out there. And I can hear it all the way. It's on the radio when I hear them. Hey, you can call the on-call victim advocate, come out here, and then boom, you're out here. Because one little thing you don't know that you are a sworn Class 3 officer, just like yours truly.
Yes, we are.
So you're sworn. You're not just a person who sits in an office. You are a police officer.
Yes, sir, we are.
You are. So that's one of those unknown things that folks may not realize. Moving on now, domestic violence. October, Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and that's probably something that sadly you have to deal with quite a lot. And
Absolutely.
And we have to deal with that, and we have to make sure everybody knows about that. And so what is it that y'all help with that? You said you respond to them every time somebody makes an arrest, right?
Yeah, it's protocol here at the sheriff's office. When an arrest is made, that an officer contact a victim advocate so that we can speak with the victim. It's just during that time, if they speak to a victim advocate, they're more likely to move forward with the process of getting away from that perpetrator. Unfortunately, so much in domestic violence, they don't. They go back to that defendant or that suspect. But if we can talk with them, talk to them about the cycle of domestic violence, offer resources and help, and again, it's that critical time is when they've been through this incident. It's been proven that the sooner that they can hear about those resources and have sort of that reckoning with what's going on, it's more effective, and that's why we do that. And I don't know that if we've said this, but the sheriff's office also is responsible for the municipalities. So Tega Cay, Clover, Tega Cay City, Clover City, York City, Fort Mill City. The only one is Rock Hill has their own advocates.
Right.
So we as victim advocates are responsible for all of these municipalities, as well as York County, the sheriff's office. So we're getting calls from these other places as well when they have these incidents we respond to. Just domestic violence in general is the willful intimidation or physical assault, battery, sexual assault, or any other abusive behavior as a part of a systematic pattern. It's power. It's a power play of control, and it's perpetrated by one intimate partner against another intimate partner.
Male or female, right?
Yes, yes. And to qualify as domestic violence, again, it has to be that intimate partner relationship. And here, intimate partner is either married couples, It's you have to have a child in common. If you're not married, that's another child in common, or you have to have lived together, either cohabitating now or formally cohabitated.
For a length of period of time?
I don't believe so. I think it's just if one way our officers establish that is if you have a toothbrush, you have clothing, you got your hairbrush. That's how our officers kind of establish living together. So, and it also incorporates same-sex couples now.
Oh, that's different. Yeah. I guess that would be a male, female.
Yes.
Male, female. So
they qualify for domestic violence.
Oh wow. Well,
it is an epidemic. It affects individuals of every community. It doesn't matter your race, your economic status, your sexual orientation, gender, race, religion, or nationality. I mean, DV doesn't discriminate.
It's a domestic
everybody,
violence.
Across the board, can end up a victim of domestic violence. It involves, again, physical injury, psychological trauma, and in severe cases, unfortunately, it involves death. And that's what we are constantly trying to help our victims understand, that DV is a cycle.
Right.
And it does not get better if the person that resorts to violence doesn't get help for that issue, for whatever that makes them lash out in violence. I like to tell my victims that we all have to learn how to compromise. We're all in relationships that have to figure out how to get along and compromise without resorting to violence. And if that person doesn't figure that out, today it might be a bruise, it might be a black eye. It could be hand marks on your arm where they held you. But next time, it could be a broken arm. It could be cuts. It can lead to strangulation. Then it could be picking up a weapon, a knife, a kitchen knife or something, or even a handgun, which is
It's almost like the use of force continuum, where
Yes.
your officer presence, and then you have this, and then you move on and move on.
Yes, it gets worse if that person doesn't figure out those triggers and learn how to control it. It's going to get worse. I've seen it now because we have repeat offenders, and you see in those relationships how it gets worse. And I've talked to victim after victim, and they affirm, and they're like, "Yeah, you're right, it did," and it's very sad.
Yeah. And now it doesn't always have to be physical. I mean, it could be verbal abuse.
Verbal abuse, emotional abuse. And of course, it's hard for us to make an arrest on that. I don't think we really do that. It's we have to have the physical evidence to make an arrest.
But that's where the
domestic
beginning.
violence.
Yeah.
Yes, that is the beginning of domestic violence.
Is there a way for somebody to say, "Hey, he or she has never laid a hand on me, but every day I come home and it's just like, I mean, it's all on. He just yells at me. She just cuts me down all the time. There's nothing." Is that something that you could start for somebody who's out there could record that, and then if something should move on to getting physical, you can move into it? Something we've talked about, record it.
It would certainly be something that I would say a lawyer could use to help you get out of a relationship.
Okay.
And it would be evidence that you would have should anything ever turn physical. I think for criminal, I think we have to have the physical.
Yeah. But the mental part of it could be the beginning of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Psychological parts. Even people that witness domestic violence, children, the damage is tremendous. Constantly, as a victim advocate, we are advocating for children to receive the victims and the children, because children are victims.
Yeah.
Anyone, parents that are in the house that witness their daughters or sons being victims of domestic violence, they are now secondary victims, and could also receive counseling and services for that, and certainly would be eligible for that.
And would you suggest to somebody who, we touched on it a second ago, where you said they're a victim of domestic violence. They go get checked out, arrest was made or whatever, but then they go back and start the cycle. What would you say to that? They go back to where it all began because they think, it only happened this one time. What would you say about that? Maybe just Is that what a victim advocate helps with? Like, hey, look, you don't have to go back. There's
Yes,
stuff we can help you with.
That's what we are on the phone explaining the cycle. We're telling them, that there's going to be bond conditions in place when the arrest is made. And, I always explain, that's to help you. It's to give you time to think about what's happened. It's to give you time to watch and see, is that person just going to blame you for what's happened? Or are they going to understand that that person needs help, and watch and see if they get that help and if they make changes? Always, I tell the victim that I know that you care about this person or you wouldn't be with them.
Right.
But don't make decisions now with your heart, make them with your head.
Right. Oh, good advice.
Don't go back into this relationship the same. Make him change. If you're going to go back to him, give him time to make the change and look for the changes. Unfortunately, most go back.
Yeah.
I'm not all.
Yeah.
But most of them go back and repeat the cycle,
which is a whole podcast full.
Yeah, it's
maybe
and
next.
It's hard. That's what makes the job hard, because I also tell people, I don't want to be I don't want to break up your relationship. I'm for marriage. I've been married 31 years.
Yeah.
I want your relationship to work, but I also want you to be alive.
Right.
You can't be in a relationship if you're dead. And I know where domestic violence leads if he doesn't get, he or she, because we have male victims.
Right.
I'm just in general.
Well,
victims
the
are
stats,
female.
The stats,
right?
show more victims are female.
Absolutely. So, let me. Speaking of stats, let me just tell you about some of the stats that we have here. South Carolina has consistently ranked in the top 10 in the nation of women that have been killed by men until last year. We were 11th last year, so that's good news for us.
Well, that's good.
Yes.
In the right direction.
In the right direction. In 2019, 36 women and 6 men lost their lives in South Carolina due to domestic violence.
Say that again?
In 2019, 36 women and 6 men lost their lives in South Carolina due to domestic violence. This year, in York County, now remember we do all now I'm going to include Rock Hill City in this one.
Municipalities, everybody.
The entire York County, this year, 4 people have lost their lives due to domestic violence. And that breaks my heart. Already this year. 4 in York County have lost their lives.
My gosh. This may sound crazy, but people being closer to home because of COVID, is that possibly a part of it, or was it, whatever?
Yeah, who knows exactly why? It's kind of up for York County this year. And it's sad that it is. We're fighting so hard. It's difficult.
It is difficult.
We always want to know why. What else can we do? We're offering all of these services. These resources are available. What else can we do?
I think everybody probably, if you work at any kind of job, you probably think, what else could I do?
Absolutely.
If things you want to get fixed and just don't change.
Absolutely. I will tell you, in 2019, 36% of the calls to the Victim Assistance Unit were for domestic violence or for a domestic disturbance.
Wow.
So about a little over a third, or about a third of what we do is domestic violence. Let's see. And I told you that we try to talk immediately when there's an arrest. That makes a big, big difference.
And hopefully somebody will listen to this, and even though the deputy should say, "I made this arrest for domestic violence," call the on-call victim advocate. But hopefully somebody will know this now, listening to this, and say, okay, I need to talk to somebody about this because it's just been going on too long. This time this happened and that hasn't happened before, so it's starting to ramp up. And so hopefully somebody will know that we have this service of victim advocate to be able to talk about it.
Absolutely. One more thing that we do as a victim advocate for victims of domestic violence, we offer them orders of protection.
Okay.
That's like a restraining order. the difference in restraining order and an order of protection, order protections are for those that have intimate partners and then have been a victim of domestic violence. They are eligible for orders of protection. Restraining orders are for like neighbors that have gotten into, or assaults or harassment, that sort of thing. So we offer assistance with order of protections.
Okay.
You don't have to have had a DV arrest. You can be abused at home, kind of what you were talking about, the verbal and stuff, you don't have to have reported the abuse. You don't have to have reported the physical abuse to law enforcement. You can still apply for an order of protection.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. That's good to know, because if you already know that this is something that might ramp up, that's probably a good idea for somebody who might be thinking of, I might need to take a next step as those order of protections. Even if it hasn't been physical, it's just straight up verbal abuse or something like that.
Probably like the pushing, the shoving and that sort of thing, the verbal and the threats. A lot of times in that, they make threats.
Yeah.
That's the verbal threats and stuff of abuse. You can go ahead and it goes through family court.
Yeah.
You can apply. There's an application process. You have to go through a hearing. And that sort of thing. Well,
that's good to know. It's good to know for somebody if you're listening, and if you think the best thing is, if you don't know, give you a call.
Right.
Give you a call. I mean, if I'm not entirely certain, I was listening to this and I saw this or whatever, could you help me? So hopefully somebody listening will reach out if they need some questions answered. Boy, we could probably talk about this for another whole 30 minutes. But before we go, like I said, you're 5+1 in the victim assistance unit over here, but you're talking about that's a lot of work. That's a lot of work, and we always talk about people who want to get into law enforcement. I always say, I want to help people. Well, you legit, the victim advocates legitimately help people with things that they need to know, and so there's a need, and we do have a volunteer service if anybody's willing to think about wanting to volunteer with Victim Advocate. Talk about the volunteer aspect of your office.
We do have space for volunteers in victim services. They do have to go through a screening process because we are here at the sheriff's office, so they do have to submit to a background check. And then our supervisor, Kathy Nelson, meets with them and works with them. They are able to come in and work with us. They might accompany us to court to sit with victims, to work with the victims in court. They might come in and work with our files. We have lots and lots, as you can imagine, paperwork.
I'm sure.
Help us keep our files up to date, answer phones, and again, just being alongside one of us and kind of being our right arm in court and helping us with our files and working with our victims. But again, if you're interested in that process, it's contacting our supervisor. That's Kathy Nelson here, and she could get you more information on that.
Go to YorkCountySheriff.com, click on the Victim Assistance Unit, and all that information and everything you heard today on the podcast pretty much is on that website because Kathy asked me to put it on there, and it's on there. And it's a pretty comprehensive. It's probably one of the longest pages we have on the website. So, wow, that we really got into this. So, I mean, I appreciate you coming in today, Robyn.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's good having, the information. It's part of the job, public information. I'm the public information officer. We're trying to get this information out to folks so they are better educated, better know what their options are, and how they can prevent themselves from being not only a victim of a crime as far as robbery or whatever, but also a victim of a crime as far as domestic violence, stalking, harassment, so on and so forth. And just know that the Victim Advocate Unit is there if you need some help and just need somebody to talk with, about what your options are. So that's what you do. You go to YorkCountySheriff.com, click on the Services tab, and they should be, or the Enforcement tab or Services tab. You can go find all the information you need to know about there. Oh, wow, that was a quick 30 minutes, a little over 30 minutes, but before we go, again, please go check us out on our social media pages, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And if you haven't heard yet, we're on a podcasting service. So that is the Anchor podcasting service, but we're also on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Breaker, Spotify, just to name a few. And tell your friends about the podcast, especially if they think they might need some assistance. Especially with you think your friend might have an issue with domestic violence or something along those lines. Go listen to the podcast. You can put your headphones in. Nobody will be able to hear what you're listening to, and then you can get some information and go on and see what we can do to help you here at the York County Sheriff's Office. And lastly, while you're at YorkCountySheriff.com, sign up for those Notify Me alerts straight to your phone. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of YCSO Behind the Badge.